The Silent Apocalypse. Neil Drake's story. Day 1. The Flash. I remember that day like it was yesterday. July 15th, 2024. The day everything changed. I was sitting at my desk, mindlessly tapping away at my keyboard, trying to meet another impossible deadline. The office was a hive of activity. Phones ringing, printers humming, my coworkers chattering about their weekend plans. It was just another Monday. Then it happened. At exactly 2:17 p.m., the world outside my window erupted in a blinding white light. It was like someone had cranked the sun up to 11. I remember shielding my eyes, thinking it must be some kind of weird weather phenomenon. But then the screaming started. My monitor flickered and died. The overhead lights went out. The constant hum of electronics that I'd grown so accustomed to suddenly ceased, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. For a moment, I thought it was just a power outage. I was so fucking wrong. I looked around, blinking spots out of my vision, and saw my coworkers clutching their heads, faces contorted in pain. Bob from accounting was the first to snap. He started shrieking about voices in his head, clawing at his ears until they bled. Before anyone could react, he charged at Jessica, our receptionist, and started bashing her head against her desk. I sat there, frozen in shock, as chaos erupted around me. People were attacking each other, screaming about voices and pain. But me? I heard nothing, felt nothing. Just an overwhelming sense of confusion and terror. I don't know what made me move, but suddenly I was on my feet, running. I dodged, flailing limbs and flying objects, my heart pounding in my chest. I made it to the stairwell and took the steps two at a time, the sounds of violence echoing behind me. Out on the street, it was like stepping into a war zone. Cars had veered off the road, crashing into buildings and each other. People were running, fighting, dying. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic scent of blood. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. I ran all the way to my apartment, dodging the insanity that had gripped the city. Once inside, I slammed the door shut and barricaded with everything I could move. Only then, in the silence of my apartment, did I break down. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and sobbed. What the hell had just happened? Why was everyone losing their minds? And why was I seemingly unaffected? As the sun set on that first day, I huddled in my apartment, listening to the sounds of screams and destruction outside. I tried every electronic device I owned, my phone, my laptop, even my old battery-powered radio. Nothing worked. That night, as I lay sleepless in my bed, one thought kept circling my mind. This is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but with a flash. My name is Neil Drake, and this is my story of survival in a world gone mad. Day 3. The Silence. I've lost track of time. The sun has risen and set twice since the flash, so I think it's been 3 days. It feels like an eternity. The screaming has mostly stopped. Now there's just silence. It's deafening in its own way. I've been rationing my food and water, trying to make it last. I don't know when I'll be able to get more. The tap still works, thankfully, but I'm not sure how long that will last either. I've tried venturing out into my balcony a few times. The city looks like a war zone. Abandoned cars litter the streets. Smoke rises from various points on the horizon. And the bodies. God, there are so many bodies. But it's the ones that are still moving that terrify me the most. I've seen people wandering aimlessly, muttering to themselves. Others move with purpose, violent purpose. This morning, I watched in horror as a group of them chased down a woman who was trying to escape. I can't even describe what they did to her. I wanted to help. But what could I do? I'm not a hero. I'm just trying to survive. The worst part is the randomness of it all. Some people seem completely gone, reduced to animalistic violence. Others appear almost normal, until something triggers them and they snap. I've been trying to figure out what caused this. The flash had to be some kind of solar flare, right? That's the only thing that makes sense with all the electronics being fried. But why did it affect people's minds? And why not mine? I've checked myself for symptoms countless times, listening for voices, looking for signs of aggression or confusion. Nothing. I feel completely normal, which in this world makes me a freak. As I write this, huddled in my darkened apartment, I can hear movement in the next unit. It's Mrs. Johnson. She was always so kind, bringing me cookies when I first moved in. Now I can hear her talking to herself, her voice rising and falling in a manic cadence. "The voices won't stop," she keeps saying. "Make them stop." I'm terrified she'll remember I'm here, that she'll try to break through the wall or my door. I push my bookshelf against the wall we share, but it feels flimsy, inadequate. I need to get out of here, find somewhere safer, somewhere with more supplies. But where? And how? The streets are a death trap, filled with those affected people. I don't even know what to call them. Zombies? Crazies? Whatever they are, they're deadly. I'm gonna try to sleep now. Tomorrow, I need to make a plan. I can't stay here forever. The food won't last, and I'm not sure my sanity will either if I have to listen to Mrs. Johnson rambling for much longer. If anyone ever reads this, know that I, Neil Drake, was here. I survived the flash. I'm still me, and I'm not giving up. Not yet, anyway. Week 1. The madness. I don't know how I've made it this far. A week. It's been a whole week since the world went to hell. I finally left my apartment 3 days ago. I had no choice. The food was gone, and the water had stopped running. Plus, Mrs. Johnson had somehow gotten into the apartment next door. The sounds. I couldn't take it anymore. Leaving was like stepping into a nightmare. The stench hit me first. Decay and smoke, tinged with something chemical I couldn't identify. Bodies everywhere, some fresh, some not so fresh. I gagged, but kept moving. I had to. I've been scavenging, staying on the move. It's safer that way. The affected, that's what I started calling them. They seem drawn to any signs of normal human activity. A door opening, footsteps, voices, it sets them all off. But here's the thing, they're not zombies, and not really. They're alive, and some part of them is still in there. I saw a man stop in the middle of attacking someone to look at a photo he'd dropped. For a moment, his face was so normal, so human. Then it contorted again, and he went right back to... I don't want to describe it. I've seen others who seem almost normal, right up until they snap. Yesterday, I thought I found another survivor like me. A woman, looking scared but sane. We locked eyes across the street, and I felt a surge of hope. Then her face twisted in rage, and she charged at me, screaming about silencing the voices. I barely got away. It's like 95% of the population has gone violently insane. But why? And why not me? I've racked my brain trying to figure it out. Was it something in the air? Water? Some sort of cosmic radiation from the solar flare? And why am I immune? The guilt is almost as bad as the fear. Why me? Why am I okay when so many others are suffering? I saw a mother trying to strangle her own child, all while weeping and begging someone to make the voices stop. How am I supposed to live with seeing things like that? I've taken to writing in this journal whenever I find a safe spot to rest. It helps keep me sane, I think. Reminds me that I'm still me, still human. I found a sporting goods store that hadn't been completely looted. Grabbed a backpack, some camping gear, a baseball bat too, for protection. I tell myself I'll only use it if I absolutely have to, but I've already had to use it twice. The hardest part is the loneliness. I've always been a bit of a loner. But this thing is something else. The isolation is crushing. Sometimes I catch myself talking out loud, just to hear a human voice. But I have to be careful. Sound attracts them. I need to find others like me. There have to be more. If I'm immune, others must be too. But how do I find them without exposing myself to the affected? For now, I'm just trying to survive each day. Find food, find water, find safe places to sleep, and hope. Hope that somehow, some way, this madness will end. But deep down, I'm terrified that this is just the beginning. Week 2. Survival. I'm not alone. After 2 weeks of hell, of thinking I was the only sane person left in this godforsaken city, I found someone else. Her name is Sarah, and she's like me, immune. It happened yesterday. I was scrounging for supplies in an abandoned convenience store, trying to be as quiet as possible. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of a can rolling across the floor. I froze, gripping my baseball bat so hard my knuckles turned white. Was it one of the infected? Had I finally run out of luck? I peered around the shelving unit, ready for the worst. Instead, I saw her. A woman about my age, wide-eyed and terrified, clutching a crowbar like her life depended on it, which I guess it did. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I think we were both afraid to hope. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you okay?" I nodded, not trusting my own voice. She lowered her crowbar slightly, and I realized I was still holding my bat in a death grip. I lowered it too. "I'm Sarah," she said. "Neil," I replied. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. We talked for hours after that, holed up in the store's back room. Sarah's story is similar to mine. She woke up after the flash to find the world gone mad. She'd been on her own ever since, dodging the affected and trying to stay alive. But here's the kicker. Sarah was a grad student in neuroscience before all this happened. She has theories about what caused the madness. According to her, the solar flare might have triggered some kind of massive electromagnetic pulse. This EMP didn't just fry electronics. It somehow affected the electrical signals in most people's brains. Think of it like a computer getting a massive power surge, she explained. It fries the circuits, corrupts the software. In this case, the software is human consciousness. It's just a theory, but it's the best explanation I've heard so far. Still doesn't explain why we're immune, though. Sarah thinks it might have something to do with brain chemistry, but she's not sure. We decided to stick together. Safety in numbers, right? Plus, it's just undescribably good to have someone to talk to. Someone who understands what I've been through because she's been through it too. We're planning our next move now. The city's becoming more dangerous by the day. Food is scarce, and the affected are getting more aggressive, more organized in their madness. Sarah says we need to head out of the city, try to find somewhere less populated. I'm scared. Terrified, actually. The city, for all its dangers, is familiar. Out there, who knows what we'll face? But Sarah's right. We can't stay here forever. Tomorrow we start gathering supplies for the journey. Sarah thinks we should find bicycles. Faster than walking, quieter than cars, if we could even find them when it works. For the first time in 2 weeks, I feel a glimmer of hope. I'm not alone anymore. We're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, we can find more people like us. We have to believe that, I think. Because if we don't have hope, what do we have left? Month 1. The community. It's been a month since the world ended. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Other times it feels like yesterday. So much has changed. Sarah and I made it out of the city. It wasn't easy. We had close calls with the affected, nearly ran out of food, and at one point, I thought we were done for when we got caught in a storm with no shelter. But we made it. And we weren't the only ones. We found others, immune like us. It started with Jack, an ex-military guy we found holed up in a gas station. Then Maria and her teenage son, Alex. A couple days later, we ran into Dr. Chen, a retired physician. Now our group is 11 strong. We've set up a base in an old high school on the outskirts of a small town. It's not perfect, but it's defensible. Thick walls, limited entry points, and a cafeteria full of canned goods. We've even managed to get a small generator working, thanks to Jack's know-how. It's not much, but that first hot shower felt like heaven. But it's not all good news. Building a community, even a small one like ours, comes with challenges. Tensions run high. Everyone's traumatized. Everyone's lost someone. Disagreements can spiral quickly. I've had to break up more than one fight. And then there are the affected. They're drawn to the sound and movements, and our little community generates plenty of both. We take turns on watch, but it's exhausting. The constant vigilance wears on you. Sarah's been working with Dr. Chen, trying to understand more about our immunity and the nature of the affected. They've been running tests on all of us, looking for commonalities. So far, the only thing we all share is that none of us were at any kind of medication when the flash happened. It's a thin lead, but it's something. We've also learned more about the affected. They're not mindless. They could problem solve, use tools, and they're changing, adapting. The madness seems to come in waves. Sometimes they're almost lucid, and that's almost worse. Because in those moments, you can see the person they used to be, just before the madness takes them again. I've taken on a leadership role, along with Sarah and Jack. Never saw myself as a leader, but someone has to make the hard decisions, like what to do with David. David showed up a week ago, desperate and alone. We took him in, of course, but 3 days later, he started hearing voices. We isolated him immediately, but the question remains, what do? We can't let him go. He knows where we are, and in his madness, he might leave others back to us. But keeping him locked up feels wrong, and if he gets loose inside our base, these are the kind of decisions we face now, the kind that keeps me up at night. Despite it all, we're surviving. More than that, we're trying to build something, a safe haven, a place where we can do more than just survive. We've started planting crops in the school's sporting field. Alex is teaching a couple of the younger kids, trying to keep some semblance of normalcy. In the evenings, we gather in the cafeteria, share meals, and for a little while, we can almost forget the nightmare outside. Almost. Tomorrow, Jack and I are leading a supply run to a nearby town. We need medical supplies, and the local pharmacy is our best bet. It's risky, but necessary. That's the nature of our world now. Every day is a risk, but we take it because the alternative is giving up. And if that's one thing this month has taught me, it's that humans don't give up easily. We adapt. We survive. We hope. Even in the face of madness, we hope. Month 3, the hunt. 3 months. It feels surreal to write that. 3 months since the world as we knew it ended. 3 months of survival, of rebuilding, of adapting to this new reality. And just when we thought we were getting a handle on things, everything changed again. Food is running low. Our carefully rationed supplies are dwindling faster than we'd hoped, and the small crops we planted aren't ready yet. We've picked clean every store and house within a safe radius of our base. Now we have to venture further out, take bigger risks. That's why I'm writing this from the cab of an old pickup truck, parked in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse. Jack, Maria, and I are on a supply run. A big one. We're after a rumored food distribution center about 50 miles from our base. It's the furthest any of us have gone since the flash. The journey here was intense. The affected have changed. They're not just wandering aimlessly anymore. They're organizing, for lack of a better word. We saw groups of them working together, setting up ambush points along the roads. It's like the madness is evolving, becoming more focused, more dangerous. We lost Sam 2 weeks ago to one of the organized groups. He was a good kid, barely 20. I keep seeing his face, hearing his screams as he's dragged away. We couldn't save him. I know that, logically. But the guilt, it eats at you. Back at the base, tension is high. David, the guy who started hearing voices, he's still alive, still locked up. Sarah and Dr. Chen have been trying to study him, to understand the progression of the madness. They think they might be onto something, a way to temporarily suppress the voices. But their experiments are risky, and not everyone in the group is comfortable with it. There's been talk of leaving, of finding somewhere more secluded. The affected are getting too close. Too often, Jack wants to stay and fortify our position. Maria thinks we should try to find a boat, head for one of the islands off the coast. Me? I'm torn. Every option seems to lead more danger, more unknown variables. And then there's the issue of new arrivals. Word has somehow spread about our little sanctuary, and we're getting more survivors showing up at our gates. Each one is a risk. Are they really immune? Or just in the early stages of madness? But turning them away feels inhumane. These decisions weigh heavy. Sometimes I wish someone else would step up, take the lead. Sarah's been my rock through all this. I don't know what I'd do without her. She's brilliant, tough, and somehow still manages to find moments of humor in our grim situation. Last night, as we were planning the supply run, she looked at me and said, "You know, Neil, when I imagined our first road trip together, this wasn't quite what I had in mind." We both laughed, and for a moment, things felt almost normal. But normal is a luxury we can't afford anymore. We're hunters now, scavengers in the ruins of the old world. Every day is a fight for survival, not just against the affected, but against hunger, against despair, against the darkness that threatens to consume us all. The sun's setting. We need to make our move onto the warehouse soon. Jack's doing a final check on our weapons, a mismatch of scavenged guns, bats, and makeshift spears. Maria's scanning the area with binoculars, watching for any signs of the affected. I should wrap this up. If you're reading this, whoever you are, know that we're still here, still fighting, still human. And if you're out there, if you're like us, immune, sane, alive, don't give up hope. Find us if you can. Together, maybe we can rebuild something from the ashes of this old world. But first, we have to survive the hunt. Wish us luck. We're gonna need it. Month 6. The Discovery. 6 months. Half a year since the Flash ended the world. Sometimes I look at my reflection, gaunt, bearded, eyes haunted, and I barely recognize myself. We've all changed. Had to change to survive. But today something happened that could change everything. It started with the radio. We found an old ham radio set during our last supply run, and Jack's been tinkering with it ever since. We didn't have much hope, after all. What were the chances of finding other survivors with working communication equipment? Then, this morning, we heard it. A voice crackling through the static. At first we thought we were imagining things, but no, it was real. A transmission from another group of survivors, halfway across the country. They're talking about a cure. I can hardly bring myself to write those words, a cure. It seems impossible, too good to be true. But according to the transmission, there's a research facility in Colorado that's made a breakthrough. They claim they have developed a treatment that can reverse the effects of the madness, at least in its early stages. The news had thrown our entire community into chaos. Half of the group wants to leave immediately, to make the journey to Colorado. The other half thinks it's too risky, that we can't trust a random transmission. Sarah and Dr. Chen are cautiously optimistic. They've been making progress with their own research on David. The cocktail of drugs they've been developing seems to be suppressing his symptoms, allowing him moments of lucidity. But it's not a cure, just a temporary fix. If what this other group is saying is true, it could be the key to unlocking a real, permanent solution. But the journey to Colorado, it's not going to be easy. We're talking about crossing half the country through territories we know nothing about. The effective have only gotten more organized, more dangerous, and we've seen other threats too. Groups of survivors who've turned to violence, preying on anyone weaker than them. Jack thinks we should send a small team first, to verify the information before we risk the whole group. Maria argues we're safer in numbers, that we should all go together, or not at all. Alex, her son, wants to stay put. He's scared, and I can't blame him. We made a home here, as precarious as it is. And me? I'm torn. The leader in me sees the risks, knows how dangerous false hope can be, but the human in me, God, I want to believe. I want to hope there's a way to fix this, to bring back the people we've lost to the madness. I think about my family, about all the people out there who might still be saved if this cure is real. I think about David, locked in our makeshift cell, alternating between moments of clarity and violent madness. Don't we owe it to him, to everyone affected, to at least try? There's another complication, too. Sarah's pregnant. She told me last week, and I'm still reeling from the news. A baby. In this world? It's terrifying and beautiful all at once. But it also raises the stakes. Whatever decision we make, we're not just choosing for ourselves anymore. We're going to put it to a vote tomorrow. Democracy and apocalypse. Who would have thought? Whatever we decide, it's going to be a turning point. If we stay, we're choosing to remain isolated, to focus on our own survival. If we go, we're taking a huge risk, but for the chance of something greater than just survival. As I write this, I can hear others arguing outside. The tension is palpable. We've been through so much together, but this decision could tear us apart. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. I don't know if this cure is real, or if we'll ever survive long enough to find out. But I do know this. 6 months ago, I was alone. Certain I was the last sane person in a world gone mad. Now I'm part of a community. I found love, purpose, hope. Whatever happens next, whatever we decide, we're in this together. And maybe, just maybe, we're on the brink of writing a new chapter. Not just in our story, but in the story of humanity itself. The world ended 6 months ago. Tomorrow, we decide if we're ready to try and bring it back. Year 1. The journey. A year. It's been a year since the flash. Since the world we knew crumbled around us. And what a year it's been. We voted to pursue the cure. It wasn't unanimous, but in the end, the hope of saving humanity outweighed the risks. We decided to split up. Half the group would stay behind to maintain our base, while the rest of us would make the journey to Colorado. I'm writing this from the back of our retrofitted school bus, somewhere in what used to be Nebraska. The journey has been brutal. We've lost people, good people. Each loss feels like a piece of my soul being ripped away. We lost Jack 3 weeks into the trip. He sacrificed himself to save Maria and Alex from a horde of the affected. I can still hear his last words over the radio. It's been an honor, Neil. Keep him safe. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for not being there. The affected have continued to evolve. They're not just organized now, they're strategic. We've encountered groups that seem to have a hierarchy, with more intelligent ones leading the others. It's terrifying to think how much their humanity might still be intact, twisted and corrupted by the madness. We've also had run-ins with other groups of survivors. Some have been friendly, eager to trade information and supplies. Others, not so much. We narrowly escaped a group that had turned to cannibalism. The things we've seen, the things we've had to do to survive, they haunt me. Sarah's pregnancy is progressing. Dr. Chen is doing his best to ensure her health, but the stress of the journey and the limited medical supplies make it risky. Every day, I'm torn between hope for our child and fear of bringing a new life into this nightmare world. This research on David has hit a roadblock. The drug cocktail is becoming less effective. He has fewer and fewer moments of lucidity. Sarah and Dr. Chen are working tirelessly to adjust the formula, but our supplies are limited. we're racing against time on multiple fronts. We've made contact with the Colorado group a few more times via radio. Their reports on the cure are encouraging, but also confusing. They're talking about reversing the polarity of neural oscillations, another scientific jargon that goes over my head. Sarah seems cautiously optimistic, but also skeptical of some of their claims. The journey has changed us all. Maria has become our de facto security chief, her maternal protectiveness extending to the entire group. Alex has grown up fast. Too fast. He's no longer the scared teenager we left with, but a young man hardened by the road. And for me, leadership weighs heavier than ever. Every decision feels like it could be the one that dooms us all. The responsibility is crushing, but I can't show it. They all look to me for strength, for direction. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a part, the role of a leader, while inside, I'm just as scared and unsure as everyone else. But we've come too far to turn back now. Colorado is still weeks away, assuming we can find enough fuel and avoid the worst of the affected territory. Every day is a struggle. Every mile a victory. I think about our base, about the half of our group we left behind. We haven't been able to contact them for weeks. Are they safe? Did we make the right choice in splitting up? These questions gnaw at me in the quieter hours of the night. A year ago, I was Neil Drake, office worker, just trying to make it through another mundane day. Now, I'm the leader of a group of survivors on a desperate journey across a post-apocalyptic America, chasing the hope of a cure that might not even exist. If you're reading this, know that we're still out there, still fighting, still hoping. The road is long and dangerous, but we're not giving up. We can't, because if this cure is real, it's not just our salvation, it's the key to reclaiming our world. A year of survival, of loss, of hardship beyond imagination, but also a year of unity, of resilience, of the indomitable human spirit. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Onwards to Colorado. Onwards to hope. Year 2. The new normal. 2 years. It feels, again, surreal to write that. 2 years since the flash that ended the world as we knew it. 2 years of survival, of loss, of hope, of despair. And yet, here we are, still fighting, still alive. I'm writing this from our new home, a fortified compound in what used to be a small town in eastern Colorado. We never made it to the research facility. The closer we got, the more dangerous the journey became. The affected seemed to be congregating in the area, as if drawn to the same beacon of hope we were following. And then, 3 months ago, we lost contact with the Colorado group entirely. Their last transmission was garbled, filled with screams and the sounds of fighting. We don't know if they were overrun, if the cure was real, or if it was all an elaborate trap. The not knowing, it's almost worse than the confirmation of failure. So we've settled here, in this little town that's become our fortress. Our group has grown. We've taken in other survivors we met along the way. We're up to about 50 people now. It's not the life we'd hoped for, but it is a life. We're doing more than just surviving now. We're starting to live again. Sarah gave birth 6 months ago, a little girl. We named her Hope. It seems fitting, if not a little cliche. The birth was difficult. No modern medical facilities, limited supplies, but Sarah pulled through. She's the strongest person I know. Watching her with Hope, seeing that little smile, it reminds me why we keep fighting. We've started farming, using seeds we've scavenged and knowledge pieced together from old books and the collective memory of our group. It's hard work, but there's something deeply satisfying about growing your own food. We're not just taking from the old world anymore, we're building something new. The affected are still out there, still a constant threat, but we've learned to live with it. We have walls now, guards, early warning systems. We've even started mapping their movements, trying to understand their patterns. They seem to migrate with the seasons, like some twisted parody of wildlife. David, we lost him. The cocktail of drugs stopped working entirely. In his last moments of lucidity, he thanked us for trying, for not giving up on him. Then he asked us to end it. It was the hardest decision I've had to make, but we owed him that much. Sarah was devastated. She had invested so much in trying to save him, but his death wasn't in vain. Everything we learned from him, every bit of data we collected, it's all going towards our ongoing research. Because we haven't given up on finding a cure. Sarah and Dr. Chen have set up a lab in the old high school. It's rudimentary compared to what they've used before, but they're making progress. Slow progress, but progress nonetheless. They've managed to synthesize a new version of the drug cocktail that seems more stable. We're cautiously optimistic. We've re-established contact with our old base. They're still there, still surviving. We're planning an expedition to bring them here. Strength in numbers and all that. Plus, I miss them. Their family. Life has fallen into a routine of sorts. We have town meetings every week to discuss issues and make decisions. We've started a school for the kids. We have 10 of them now, ranging from newborns to teenagers. Alex is one of the teachers. He's found his calling, I think. Maria has become our head of security. She's tough but fair, and people respect her. She's training everyone in self-defense and weapons use. In this world, she says, everyone needs to be a fighter. As for me, I'm still leading, for better or worse. It's not something I ever wanted or expected, but it's who I am now. The weight of it never really goes away, but I'm learning to carry it better. Sarah helps. She's my partner in every sense of the word. Co-leader, co-parent, my rock. We've started to make contact with other settlements. Tentative alliances are forming. There's talk of setting up trade routes, of pooling resources and knowledge. It's dangerous opening ourselves up like that, but it's also exciting. It feels like the first steps toward rebuilding society. 2 years ago, I thought the world had ended. In many ways, it did. But humans are resilient. We adapt, we survive, and maybe, just maybe, we can build something better from the ashes of the old world. We face challenges every day. Food is still scarce. Medical supplies are running low. The affected are evolving, becoming more dangerous, and there are other threats too. Raiders, diseases we thought we'd eradicated. The harsh realities of a world without modern infrastructure. But we face it together, as a community, as a family. 2 years of the apocalypse have taught me this. The end of the world isn't a single event. It's a process. And so is rebuilding. We may never get back to what we lost, but we can recreate something new. Something, in some ways, maybe even better. The road ahead is long and uncertain, but we'll walk it together. One day at a time, one step at a time, towards a future we can only imagine. This is Neil Drake, signing off for now. But our story? It's far from over. The future. As I sit here writing this final entry, the sun is setting on another day in our new world. It's been 5 years since the flash that changed everything. 5 years of struggle, of loss, of small victories and crushing defeats, but also 5 years of resilience, of community, of hope. Our settlement has grown. We're over 200 strong now. The old town has been fully repurposed. Houses repaired, gardens planted in every available space, solar panels jerry-rigged onto roofs. It's not the world we knew, but it's home. Hope is 5 now. She's never known the old world, never seen a television or eaten ice cream. But she knows love, community, and the value of working together. Sometimes I look at her and the other children playing, and I see the future. Not the one we lost, but the one we're building. Sarah and Dr. Chen's research continues. They've had breakthroughs and setbacks, moments of excitement followed by crushing disappointments. But they haven't given up. None of us have. The affected are still out there, still a threat. But we've learned to coexist in this strange new ecosystem. We've made contact with settlements across the country, even a few overseas. It's slow going. Long-range communication is still spotty at best, but we're rebuilding a network, sharing knowledge, resources, and hope. There's a talk of a summit, of forming a new kind of government. It's exciting and terrifying all at once. The affected are changing. Some of them seem to be regaining bits of their humanity. We've had a few turn themselves in, begging for help. It's controversial, but we're trying to rehabilitate them. It's slow, dangerous work, but every success feels like a victory against the madness that nearly destroyed us all. We face new challenges every day. Climate change, unleashed from the constraints of human industry, is reshaping the world in unpredictable ways. Old diseases are resurfacing as medical knowledge is lost, and there are always those who see the apocalypse as an opportunity for power, trying to carve out kingdoms in the ruins of the old world. But for every new threat, we find new strength. We're more adaptable, more resourceful than we ever knew. The barriers that once divided us, race, religion, nationality, seem trivial now. We're all survivors, all part of the same story. As for me, I'm tired. Leadership is a heavy burden, and I've carried it for 5 long years. But I'm also proud. Proud of what we've built, of the community we've forged in the fire of the apocalypse. Sarah and I are talking about stepping back, letting new leaders emerge. It's time, I think. Time to focus on hope, on our family, on the simple joys of living rather than just surviving. I often think about that day, 5 years ago, when I was huddled alone in my apartment, certain I was the last sane person in a world gone mad. If I could go back, I'd tell that scared, lonely version of myself, hold on, it gets better. Not easier, but better. You'll find purpose. You'll find love. You'll find hope. The world ended 5 years ago, but that wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. We're writing it together, one day at a time. With every crop we plant, every child we teach, every small kindness we show to one another. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I do know this. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Because that's what humans do. We adapt, we survive, and we hope. And maybe, just maybe, we'll build something more beautiful from the ashes of the old world. This is Neil Drake, signing off for the last time. But our story, it's just the beginning. The end, and a new beginning. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. Come back next time for some more scary stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.